The Nashville airport passengers came to a complete stop as they heard a loud clang, and their hearts leaped into their throats. After seeing the most heartwarming thing they had ever seen, they were all crying a few minutes later. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. Hearing the boom, Jen Schring stopped along with other passengers, and being a modern person, she took out her phone to take a video right away. She would be happy that she did in the future because, together with other passengers, she saw something unforgettable. Everything was operating as usual. As travelers were lugging bags and making their way through terminals, the airport was at its busiest. Suddenly, a megaphone flared to life and began to ring loudly across the airport. A flight attendant made an announcement stating that some individuals in the vicinity were deserving of extra care and acknowledgement. The Star-Spangled Banner, a well-known song, began playing right after the announcement. Everyone was aware of its meaning. It was the hymn to which American soldiers hoisted the flag following their victory over Britain in the War of 1812. This song's sound was what stopped the airport in its tracks. Though the passengers may have guessed what was ahead, it's possible that they had different guests in mind when they arrived in Nashville on that fateful day. A bunch of kids headed for an American Airlines gate. The passengers realized that they were going to see a touching scenario when the screen revealed that they were headed to Orlando, Florida. The actor who portrayed Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump is a familiar face to everybody. Gary Sinise is his name. In addition to being an actor and director, Gary is also known as Ken from Apollo 13. Indeed, it was because of him that the airport had erupted. In addition to his numerous accolades from the performing world, such as a Tony, a Golden Globe, and a Primetime Emmy, Gary is also a well-known philanthropist and humanitarian. He established the Gary Sinise Foundation in 2011 to support military veterans and the families of those who perished while serving their nation. He often adds, "We can always do a little more to show our gratitude to our nation's defenders, even though we can never do enough." By coming up with ever greater ideas to honor these families and bring them happiness, Gary has demonstrated that he genuinely believes what he says. As far as the eye can see, it all began in 2009. Gary was making his first visit to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in April. He got to know U.S. Army Specialist Brendan Morocco, the first quadruple amputee and 9/11's bomb survivor. The Commissioner of the Fire Department of New York, FDNY, met with Gary in September 2009 to discuss financing for Brendan's Smart House project. After the experiment proved successful, Gary wanted to turn the conversion of fallen soldiers into smart houses, an even greater undertaking, when he established his foundation the next year. RISE stands for Restoring Independence, Supporting Empowerment, and that is what he named the initiative. Gary was able to get more knowledge about the needs of veterans and their families with every passing program. He achieved this by interacting with the community he was creating on a regular basis. Thus, he developed the Snowball Express program in 2017. This is what would cause an airport to come to a complete stop and its occupants to cry. 1,750 individuals poured in as the hush stretched out and everyone became motionless. For the benefit of the families of soldiers who had died while serving their nation, the Snowball Express was established. To memorialize their loved ones and enjoy a few days of fun, mothers, dads, daughters, and sons of these slain warriors were taken on an all-expense-paid 5-night trip to Disney World. It was these individuals that entered the airport and brought everything to a halt. As Jen Tringle entered the concourse, she saw something that would stay in her memory forever. Children were excitedly escorted by troops, accompanied by their relatives, on a journey that would allow them to laugh, honor, and remember those they had lost. Moved to tears, the travelers at the airport joined the military in singing the national song while remaining still. While some put their hands on their chests, others lifted them in a sign of unity. However, the mood of the occasion could not be denied. As they sang, many eyes began to well up with tears. Jen would remember that it seemed like a terrible and lovely moment when the kids got on the aircraft. It was terrible to see the families and to remember the cost they and their loved ones had to pay to become citizens of the United States. She saw, as she turned to face the individuals surrounding her, that some even appeared to be crying. But Jen wasn't content to just observe. She was curious about the program's purpose and the activities these kids and their families would be participating in visiting Disneyland. She turned off her webcam and read voraciously while searching the Snowball Express on her computer. She discovered that the family's enjoyment and healing were the most crucial aspects of this retreat. Jen was unable to locate this information online, but for one particular Utah child, the good times had begun even before they had left the airport. When Santa arrived, Johnny Alley and his mother were waiting to board the aircraft. There was a very compelling reason why Santa was at the airport that day, even though no one was expecting to see a large man dressed in red. And very few people were uninterested when Emily, Johnny's mother, revealed the reason behind his look to them. Emily found the love of her life while working as a waiter. She can still clearly recall the day Dave came in the restaurant drenched wet from the rain, hat in hand. He appeared reluctant to enter for fear of leaving stains on the floor, but he was also reluctant to leave since the rain had battered him severely. He remained still at the door. No one got up to assist him because they were equally perplexed, but Emily just glared at him before vanishing around the back of the eatery. She emerged with a dry towel and her flip-flops. Without saying a word, she reached out to him, and she could not forget the relief in his eyes. He gave her a heartfelt thank you and promised to come back, even though he didn't have his money with him right now. Reaching into her pocket, she handed him a cup of coffee. She'd never met a man with such gratitude. He moved to the bar and asked for her name after the rain had stopped. He returned to the restaurant 2 minutes after leaving and stated, "I'm afraid I won't see you when I get back. Could you please provide me with your phone number? I hope you won't suspect that I have any hidden agenda." Watching him neatly put her phone number into his coat pocket, Emily jotted it down on a napkin and waved goodbye. The following day, he returned. And the subsequent one. Next up was the other. When they were dating for 2 years, Dave expressed his desire to serve his nation. Emily was uncertain about how to interpret this. She had both lived and heard stories. She was left fatherless when she was 6 years old. Her kind father, who never injured a fly, had perished in an airstrike, and she feared losing another person to a conflict, even if they were actively resisting it. They were sitting at the cafe where they had first met on the day Dave told her the news. He was tinkering with something in the pocket of his coat. In retrospect, Emily would have feigned not to notice the indications when she saw him squirming and persuaded him to tell her what was upsetting him. The words he spoke caused the blood in her veins to freeze. "I've been drafted," Dave exhaled and let out the weighty words that had started to feel like lead in his gut. He wished he could take back the words he had just spoken as he watched all the blood drain from Emily's face. However, Dave was aware that he wouldn't, even if he could. He couldn't just let go. He had his reasons, and they had been there for too long. The firefighter who had rescued him from the middle school fire remained in touch with him. That day, he had gone to the restroom, and it was then that he began to feel quite hot. Then the screaming began, and the heat increased to the point that he lost all patience. His heart leaped into his mouth upon emerging, and flames licked every channel that was open to him. When he realized there was no way out and no way back, he became terrified. A person materialized in front of him just as he was beginning to choke and lose consciousness. He wasn't even certain at that point that he wasn't dreaming the entire thing, but when he finally awoke up in the hospital, he realized it wasn't all in his head. Dave found the man, and they had been in contact ever since. He was motivated to live for something greater than himself by the firemen, and this urge was only heightened by the endless news reports of poor and defenseless people. He felt sad. This was his chance, but he couldn't let it pass. While their drinks went cold and the chicken got mushy, Emily had been looking at him with a pale face. With a quiet gesture, she took something out of her purse and set it down on the table. When the test result that said he was going to become a parent stared back at him, it was Dave's turn to be shocked into silence. The weight of the decision they would have to make in the oppressive stillness weighed hard on their shoulders as they finished their supper in silence. The days that followed were difficult, with Emily suffering from morning sickness and Dave attempting to assist despite his overwhelming sense of guilt. It was time to make a choice, a week after they'd each dropped bombshells on each other. They needed to release the intense tension in their house immediately. They chose to conduct the talk over another supper at their location almost unconsciously. Emily was the first to speak. "I understand why you haven't said anything in days, and while the answer appears clear, there should only be one. However, I've realized that I can't make you alter your mind, so I'll have to let you leave in good faith and hope you come back." Dave remained motionless for a long moment before tears began to fall down his cheeks. He produced the folded napkin he had written "Prettiest Girl in the World" exactly in front of his wife's phone number on the day he first met her. Whenever he went, especially when he was nervous, he would constantly fidget with the napkin. He took her hand and placed the napkin on the table. Emily was also unable to hold back her emotions at that time. Though their time together was brief, that marked the start of the remainder of their lives. They made the most of their time together because Dave was leaving in few months. Dave even experienced the baby kick a couple of times, and they went back to the restaurant where they originally met on a regular basis. He gave her the napkin on which she had scribbled her phone number all those years ago, before he departed. Dave departed to serve his nation on the unstated assumption that he might not come back on the day they both dreaded arrived. After exchanging heartfelt goodbyes, Emily was forced to watch him go. A few weeks before to Emily's due date, she discovered a stranger at her doorway. Thus, Dave was never able to see his son. His expression was grave, and he was dressed like a soldier. He couldn't look Emily in the eye, so he held out a letter to her. His first words to her were, "I'm sorry." He didn't have to elaborate. Emily broke down into sobs and fell to the ground like a pack of soft biscuits. Because of this, their kid Johnny was never even able to meet his father. There are very few people who can truly comprehend or even fathom this catastrophe. In order to help Johnny remember Dave with affection, Emily would always show him images and tell him tales about him. Johnny was always aware of what had transpired and the reason his father was not present. Still, there were certain effects of his fatherless upbringing. It did, for starters, add to his Santa preoccupation. He was amazed at the man who went from home to house all night long carrying gifts for the kids. He saw Santa as the perfect example of a parent, someone who would face the coldest night of the year to bring joy to his children. Santa Claus was the greatest hero ever to a fatherless youngster. His mother always made Christmas, his favorite holiday, delightful for him by getting him the nicest gifts. However, she made arrangements for an actor to arrive at the airport dressed as Santa Claus that year in an effort to make his favorite holiday even more special. She had been willing to spend a significant sum of money to hire the top impersonator available. But as soon as the actor learned that the young performer he was going to see was the son of a dead hero, he declined to take any kind of payment. One of Johnny's biggest dreams had been to meet the burly, giving Santa, as he would exclaim when he saw him at the airport. And for him and more than 700 families, it was only the start of an incredible retreat. The families were able to establish connections with one another after arriving at their location. Since many of them were previously acquainted, the trip simply served to strengthen their bonds and provide a solid support network for anybody in need. A memorial garden at Disneyland included more than 600 American flags, each one symbolizing the life of a fallen warrior. This location allows the nation to commemorate the fallen and allows the families to have happy memories of them. Aside from the benefit to the families, though, the journey also made others at the airport who were fortunate enough to be present at this moment feel grateful. On that terrible day, everyone at the Nashville airport must have been thinking, "Phew, what an experience." And what a memorable event that was, with happiness blending with sorrow and an unending sense of thankfulness. It was wonderful to witness the community show compassion and assist individuals who had lost loved ones in moving on. Events and programs such as these will act as a continual reminder to remember and pay tribute to our heroes. As we go, our hope is that the Disneyland retreat will continue for a very long time, and that many more kids will be able to draw some comfort from these wonderful experiences, just like Johnny did. Have you ever seen something that seemed to halt time? What caused it, and how did it feel? Leave a comment below to let us know. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.